Alright, this is chapter 8, chapter 5, number 8, I'm sorry, part 5. We're continuing on with this thing. We're going to talk about how you update this thing, and this is part D. It's going to output with this right here. Now, I just want to, like I said, this is very crucial. If you don't have this statement right here, this loop will never be false to exit. Okay? Very, very important with this thing. Alright, very important. So that's how you're going to output this thing. This part D. Let me also take you to the next part. It's part E. D, E, E, E. Can't remember that full bit. So when you output this thing, make sure you have like border lines in here. Take a look at this thing. Part E says, output the sum of the square of all the odds between the first and the second. Okay. Just by reading this thing, do you think you need to have the output the last memory? Like I said here, between part D, look at this right here. Go back to part B and C. Part B, you want the sum of all the evens, right? This output is outside of the end of the while loop. This is inside the while loop for part B. Meaning you will see every changes that will take place in there. This problem in E asks you to actually output the sum of all the square of all the odd number, first number, and second number. All right. So that must happen outside of the while loop. It's very similar to part C. Okay, very similar to it. So let's take a look at this thing. You still have, look at part E. You still have to, I'm looking at this part right here. You still have to read in the first number and the second number, right? The first number and the second number still have to be there. So you have to test to see the first number and the second number. I'm going to snag this part right here. It's the same concept to figure out all the odd or not, right? So I'm going to come down here, I'm going to do, to figure out if this is divided by 2 mod 2, if I don't have remainder, I want to add a 1 to that assigned to counter. If not, it is an odd number, I want to start with the counter as an odd number with this thing. The same thing as I'm going to do, you got to do all this in the while loop. Okay, so I'm going to just take this while loop right here. Just take this while loop right here. Take this and just clean this up here a little bit with it. So let me gut this part out. We won't be using that, and of course this will say whatever it is going to say. We're going to look at this in a second here. Okay. But my whole point in saying is the C out, because you want the sum, the final memory for this thing. This C out will be outside, at the outside of the while loop. Okay. Alright, let's look at this. Inside this thing, you want the sum of the square odd. Again, you're accumulating. Sum of all the square odd starts out has to have a base with this thing. So basically, you're going to take the sum of all the square odd and take the square of it, multiply it together, and you're going to add it to the sum of, what is the current sum of all the square odds right now? 0, correct? So somewhere on the top here in the memory that you have to allocate here. So I'm going to do int sum, what do I call it? Sum of square odds. I think that's a good name. Okay. So sum square odds. I'm going to initialize this thing to 0. Okay. Very important. It starts out with 0. Come down here inside this body of this thing. You're going to take sum of the square odd. You're going to multiply that with the multiply it first. The math is going to happen. The math's going to happen first as the counter. The two counter multiply it first because order of precedence. This will be multiplied, and then it's going to add it to this, which is 0, correct? And then you need to update this thing. I'm writing this from the right to the left. Sum of the square odd. Okay. Once you've done that, you need to actually update your counter. Again, your counter needs to be added to. So counter add 2, and that needs to be updated to the counter. Assign it to equal to the left hand side, which is counter. Okay, so that is inside of this structure right now. What you want to output in this thing, this needs to output is the sum, literal of a sum that says the square of squares of odd integer between, I don't know what number, the first number and the second number, between your first number and second number, right? It's a variable, and you give that something like this, like a little quote, and then this, and this memory is what's the memory I'm talking about. It goes here, and we do an inline. So moves the cursor down with it. Okay. So this will be part E with this thing. Part E with this thing. All right. Let me take part F. Part F. Believe it or not, when I read this thing, part 8F has nothing to do with first number and second number. Nothing. I hope this is right. Has nothing to do with it. What seems to be A, B, C, D, and you're doing all this while loop and all this first number, second number, I didn't understand how output all uppercase. I was connecting. What do you mean by output all uppercase? Well, output all uppercase, yeah, this is silly, but you're just going to output all the A, B's, all 26 letters of the alphabet. Uppercase A all the way to uppercase Z. That's how I understand it. So if you look at this inside of this thing, I want you to do cout, put a like a little instruction on there. It says output uppercase letter R, something like this. Okay. It's gonna go, and you're gonna write a while loop. So what are you gonna start out with? Something like a char, right? A character with this thing. And I'm gonna start out with the letter uppercase A. How do you represent a char in here? I'm gonna write this thing from the right hand side. Uppercase A. This is equivalent to your initialization to your while loop, right? To while loop. So what has to be assigned in this memory? I don't know. Let's just make up a character. CH character. Now we have to define this thing, right? Let's come up here to the top. Somewhere in the top, we need to actually initialize and give that a character in this thing. Char character. Cool, something like this. Can we live with that? Well, actually, counter I would call. I don't like the word character. Let's do counter. Char counter. Okay, char counter. That sounds a lot better. It gives me a little bit more meaningful. Counter. Okay, so the counter is going to be initialized to uppercase A. What's your while loop going to look like? Well, you're going to take while, you're going to stick in, test in your char counter here. If it's less than or equal to inclusive with uppercase Z. Don't bother doing static cast or any of those values. That's the long way of doing this, folks. So this is, I don't normally do this, but they give me no choice, and this is open to interpretation. This is how I understood it. So cout, we're going to output in this. You're going to do what? Output the char counter here, separate by a space, right? And then you need to update. Third thing is what? Update your char counter by adding 1 to it. So it's going to go A, go in, less than or equal to Z, true. I'll put that A, put a space after it, update it, add 1 to it, goes to B, so on and so on until it falls into your last character Z, and then it just goes into the next character. Remember the ASCII table I was telling you about? Whatever that value is, it's going to be greater than, it's going to be false with this thing. That's it, folks. That's all. I understand how this thing works, and I'm not gonna do C out and give this a blank line, so it just, you know, makes it a little pretty. Okay.